Welcome to my latest podcast segment of Military Firearms on Friday. Over the next two segments, we will focus on a two-part series covering the firearms of the American Civil War. Today, we will focus on the two most popular firearms used by both Union and Confederate soldiers during the war. These two comprise the most firearms used by both sides, and they are the Springfield rifle musket and the Enfield rifle musket. To help you better understand both guns, there are a few characteristics that they both share. Both are described as muskets because they are loaded from where the bullet exits the barrel, formerly known as the muzzle. As well, they are also called rifles because the barrel of the gun is made with grooves, or rifling, that increases the accuracy when the bullet is fired. Therefore, rifle musket is the correct style of both guns, but you may hear me use rifle or musket interchangeably because that is how they are often described among historians. There is another major characteristic they both share. Both rifles are .58 caliber. This means that the bullet that is fired from the gun measures 0.58 inches in diameter. The style of bullet fired from both guns was developed by a French Army officer, Claude Etienne Minié, but here in America, most of the soldiers did not know French, and they called the bullet a mini ball. This style of bullet, when fired, had grooves that would expand and fit tightly into the rifling of the barrel. This causes the bullet to spin and increases the accuracy. This makes the rifles deadlier in the hands of well-trained soldiers. First off, I want to tell you about the Enfield rifle musket. This style of musket was manufactured in England. The style, designed in 1853, was used by both sides during the war. The United States government bought hundreds of thousands of these rifles from English manufacturers. They were shipped across the Atlantic Ocean, and after being inspected, they were placed into the hands of Union soldiers. But English manufacturers wanted to make as much money as possible. So, many blockade runners from the South would visit England to purchase thousands of rifles at a time. But the English government did not condone the sale of the rifles to the Confederates, so English merchants would meet the Confederate blockade runners in Bermuda or Jamaica and transfer the rifles. The blockade runners would then try their luck at outrunning the United States Navy. Some blockade runners were very successful. One blockade runner named the Fingal ran the blockade and brought over 11,000 Enfield rifles into Savannah, Georgia in 1861. So, importation played a major role in supplying rifles to both sides during the war. Now we will focus on the American-made alternative to the Enfield rifle. The Springfield rifle musket was named after the armory that began production of American firearms in Springfield, Massachusetts during the Revolutionary War. The Model 1861 Springfield was the most common type of Springfield rifle used in the Civil War. Although most of the rifles were manufactured at the Springfield Armory, thousands of the same model were manufactured in several armories throughout many northern states. This style of rifle was used mostly by Union soldiers early in the war. With a production number in the hundreds of thousands, this style of rifle was the first American attempt to manufacture a rifled musket on a large scale. Soldiers from both sides seemed to have different opinions on which rifle was their favorite. Of course, soldiers were given a rifle and did not have many chances to choose. The biggest opportunity to choose the model they liked was after a battle. For example, after the Confederates defeated the Union Army at the Battle of Bull Run in 1861, thousands of Springfield rifles were left on the battlefield to be picked up by Confederate soldiers. After the Battle of Chickamauga that took place here in Georgia in September of '63, thousands of Confederates were given Enfield rifles after the Union forces retreated from the battlefield. Whether or not a soldier preferred a certain type depended on a few differences. Union soldiers preferred the Springfield rifle because it was manufactured using a system of interchangeable parts. That meant that if a soldier's rifle malfunctioned and was broken, it was much easier to take the rifle apart and replace one part instead of paying to replace the whole rifle. On the other hand, many Union soldiers preferred the Enfield rifle because all the steel was blued. The bluing process coats the steel in a chemical and helps protect it from rusting when it is raining and the rifle gets wet. The Springfield rifles were not blued and rusted very easily. Officers reprimanded their soldiers if their rifles were dirty, so many soldiers liked the Enfield because it was easier to keep clean. Many Confederate soldiers were overjoyed when they received Enfield rifles. During the beginning of the war, many Confederates were not equipped with rifles that functioned well. For example, after looking at the records for one regiment of soldiers, you can see where there were rifles of various models, styles, and calibers. This made it harder to get the right kind of ammunition to the right soldier so he could use his musket in battle. So when Confederates were given the chance to pick up either an Enfield or Springfield, they would choose to do so instead of carrying around a musket that was inferior or inoperable. Although both styles of muskets have various characteristics, their effect on the way the war was fought is the same. When compared to the firearms that were built between 1777 and 1847, the rifle musket was much more accurate and much more effective at causing casualties on the field of battle. Although military technology was advanced, generals of the Civil War era studied the tactics of Napoleon and other historic generals from the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Marching into the battle in a line to face the enemy was still popular. Due to their rifle barrels, both the Springfield and Enfield rifles were accurate up to 400 yards. This increased the killing capacity of the rifle musket, and therefore increased the carnage that soldiers produce when they face each other on the battlefield. The 58 caliber mini-ball produces horrific results. Paired with lacking medical advancements, the end result for gunshot wounds was most likely amputation, infection, or death. Recent research has led many historians to believe the number of Americans killed by the war totals around 620,000.
Thousands of these are owed to the increased efficiency of both the Springfield and Enfield rifle muskets.